community members doing what they can to show that it is possible to write modern, secure code with ColdFusion, show that the community is growing and that there are all of the same sort of resources available to the CFML world that there are to the Ruby or .NET world or, the other platforms.
Welcome back to the show. Here we have a special episode. It's the 100th episode of the CF Live podcast. I have a very special guest with us today, Nolan Erck, who is the person who's appeared on the show the most. I think you've appeared like 6 or 7 times because you just have so much to say about ColdFusion. So, and you're very generous with your time, which I appreciate. So in today's show, we're going to turn the view a little bit back and look at the CF Alive revolution and how things have changed since the ColdFusion Alive podcast has been launched. And a lot of other things have happened in ColdFusion land. And also have a peek at what's coming in the future for improving ColdFusion. So welcome, Nolan.
Thanks for having me.
And just in case you don't know who Nolan is, he's the chief architect, president, and I don't know what other titles you have at South Shasta Productions in Sacramento, California. And he is a very frequent speaker at ColdFusion conferences and user groups. Rabid blogger about ColdFusion. I think that's the right phrase, Rabid. I don't know. He blogs a lot about ColdFusion, and he writes these excellent post-conference reports that tell you what happened in case you missed the conference. So, very good to have you here. So I think you should be interviewing me, shouldn't you? Or should we just be chatting and having a good time? I'm not sure. What do you think we should do? Let's ask the audience. Who should interview you?
Let's just chat and have a good time. Oh, who said that?
It was the thousands of CFers listening in their earbuds to this episode. So 100th episode, and I guess we should start with what is the CF Alive revolution, because we've got this podcast. I wrote a book. You and Lewis and the Adobe folks and many other people are doing great things to improve ColdFusion. But people may not have realized there is a CF Alive revolution going on, making ColdFusion more modern, vibrant, and secure. And to misquote someone who will remain nameless to avoid having nasty tweets sent to me, making ColdFusion great again. Yeah. So what do you think the CF Alive revolution is, Nolan?
CF Alive revolution. I guess I have 2 answers to that. One is overall it never went away. It's not like ColdFusion has actually died or that they're not releasing new versions of it. So the amount of ColdFusion related development from Adobe and Adobe related partners and things has always, been moving forward. I would personally attribute the revolution part of it to things more like the work you're doing yourself with the book and the podcast and community members doing what they can to show that it is possible to write modern, secure code with ColdFusion, show that the community is growing and that there are all of the same sort of resources available to the CFML world that there are to the Ruby or .NET world or, the other platforms.
Yeah, and I think we should give a shout out to Brad Wood, who's done a lot of work to show he's done a lot of evangelism for ColdFusion. He's got onto Reddit. It's sort of like going into the den with the lions while they attack you sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Brad's done a tremendous job. If nothing else, Brad is responsible for Command Box, which for me as a consultant these days, I consider that sort of the dividing line between modern CFML development and people maintaining legacy apps that are not looking forward at all. If you have Command Box installed, that's the game changer right there. Just having that installed, and we all love it. We owe that all to Brad. That product.
Yeah. Hey, all hail Brad. we should have had him on the. Maybe we'll have a bigger get together. We chatted a bit about that before we started hitting record. It's just so hard to schedule everyone to get on the show at one time. But maybe in a future episode we'll do a panel discussion around this.
There you go.
I did want to do something special for the 100th episode. So yeah, I mean, like I wrote on the back of the book, ColdFusion is a vibrant modern language, and you can make really complicated data-driven enterprise apps with it, and people have millions of lines of ColdFusion code in some of their apps. And although some folks have abandoned ColdFusion as dying, which I don't think it ever died, more visionary dev teams have embraced ColdFusion. And, there's lots of people writing modern ColdFusion these days, writing secure ColdFusion, and they're just using a really modern development environment and ecosystem using Docker and Command Box and all kinds of other goodies that we'll talk about a bit later that have emerged in the last few years. So very exciting times we live in, as that Chinese proverb goes, right? May you live in interesting times. So maybe we should just roll back the time machine and ask, why was this CF Live revolution started? Because it's quite a lot of work to do this. As I know you do a lot of flying around the country and telling people about good things in ColdFusion. Writing articles in your blog isn't something that happens in your sleep, Actually,
true.
So
I don't think I've personally. This might sound arrogant or what have you. I'm not sure, but I don't think I've done anything that different in the last 2 years of what we're calling the revolution time than I have previously. Like I write blog entries and I do the conference notes and things on my website pretty regularly. That's all got a self-serving component to it as well, to be perfectly honest. Like I add new content to my website because that generates more traffic, and then people look at the blog and go, oh, this is a consulting firm. They might be able to help us with some problem with our ColdFusion site. So I do it it's sort of a win-win. I get to contribute back to the community, and then it, of course, sparks conversations with people, both at other conferences and on the web. And then the same is true with speaking at conferences. I make my living networking with people, so I do a lot of networking as many times as I can throughout the year, speaking at user groups and conferences and things. So for me personally, I don't think I've done all that much different for the revolution part of it. But again, I would point that back to some of the work that folks like you are doing and some of the things that the Ortus team has come out with in the last couple of years. Command Box, again, being a great one. ForgeBox being a huge game changer as well, that I don't think quite gets the visibility or recognition that it could in other platforms.
It's the orphan stepchild of the Box family, as Brad might say. I'll just channel a little bit of Brad.
There you go. But, that sounds good.
I did do an episode on ForgeBox, I think, with is it Gareth? I'm missaying his name, and I apologize in advance. It'll come back to me. I'll correct myself in a moment. Sometimes my brain doesn't keep up with my spirit, or whatever the phrase is.
I know the feeling.
Yeah. But yeah, ForgeBox definitely, is a game changer for doing, packaging your code up and sharing it out with other folks.
Everyone, like the .NET team has their own package management, the name of which is escaping me at the moment, but they have one. The Ruby community has it. Node, of course, and the JavaScript world has NPM, which gets tons of spotlight on it. And that kind of thing really does make those platforms much more efficient. When you want to install a new library or whatever the building blocks are that you need to start a Ruby app, a .NET app, a Node.js app, whatever, 10 years ago, it used to mean go to these 9 websites, download these zip files, edit a handful of config files. You had to do a lot of manually wiring things together to get platforms to start. And now in the JavaScript world, you type npm install and the name of your package, and it just, grabs the things it needs, wires them together for you automatically. It's all sort of scripted and put together. And that's been a game changer for everything in JavaScript land and everything in .NET land and so on. And That's one of the things.
And now in ColdFusion land.
Yeah, and that's what ColdFusion and CFML has with ForgeBox, is you type your box install product name, and it goes out to ForgeBox and grabs the zip file or whatever the thing is that it needs, wires them together, and it configures everything for you. Like, people used to not like ColdBox, for instance, because getting a ColdBox app to start from a brand new, like, empty www root took a little bit of work. Download ColdBox, unzip it. You have to put it in a folder with this name. It's pretty good now about, like, everything works by default out of the box, but you still had to download it and unzip it and put it in a folder, and then make a couple of folders manually where your code would go. You make a views folder and a handlers folder and put your files in there. And now it's just box install ColdBox. You wait 5 seconds and it's there. And then you do box create app. You wait 5 seconds and you have an app and it's done. And that's all because of things like ForgeBox that help us. And so, and people know about that more now because ForgeBox exists. And there's been a lot of talk about those sort of products at the conferences and on the web and on podcasts such as this one. And we have books now like the CF Alive book that helps provide sort of a reference guide, if you will, for all of the stuff that's available in the modern CFML community that didn't used to be there.
I think it's amazing the ecosystem changes that happened. I mean, the language, we'll talk a bit more about the language changes that have occurred with both Adobe ColdFusion and Lucy. But the ecosystem changes are amazing. Anyway, coming back to this question, why this CF Live revolution got started, I think one of the major emphases is from the annual State of the ColdFusion Union survey. And we have a question in there: what aspects of ColdFusion are preventing you or your company from embracing ColdFusion? And the most popular answer there was CF is seen as dying or legacy, which 72% of people back in 2008 were saying, and a similar number in 2017 and in previous years. It's been a problem. So I just got tired of seeing that. It's like, because the truth is, it isn't dying. You know, right. Technologically, the technology has been improving with new releases every 2 years, new ecosystem changes, new box products, new other third-party products. You know, new companies using ColdFusion. You know, the ColdFusion revenue going up quarter over quarter for the last 7 years. I mean, there's a lot of good things happening, but the perception is not seen that way, both by ColdFusion developers, which I find, you know, I get upset by that. It's depressing seeing all these people upset about it, feeling what Luis called language shame.
Yeah.
But people are just ashamed to be programming in ColdFusion. And I've seen a lot of depression and burnout, you know, out in ColdFusion land. So I want to change that, get people excited and doing new stuff and learning again, not stuck.
Yeah, I think we are in a maybe unique to ColdFusion spot where I think this is just my opinion. I feel like what we'll call the 9-to-5 programmers are maybe more prevalent in the ColdFusion space than they are in the JavaScript space or the .NET space or what have you. I'm certain there are 9-to-5 programmers in other platforms, but it seems like
millions of them.
Yeah, the ones in ColdFusion land are maybe more vocal or more prominent in some way. And what I mean by that are the developers that they go to their day job, they work from 9 to 5, and at 5:01 they turn their brain off and don't want to worry about code stuff anymore at all. And so unless their companies and their bosses are physically showing them at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, look at all the new stuff you can do with ColdFusion, it's flying past them. So there are a lot of developers that we run into at some of the different events throughout the year where they'll ask a question, we'll say things like, oh, well, why don't you just... I've actually had this happen within the last year. I was at a ColdFusion conference, and I won't name where I was at or what was going on at the time, just to try to keep it a little more generally helpful and not sound like I'm picking on someone. But I was at a conference talking about APIs and said, okay, well, you would hook your code up, your ColdFusion code would do this, and then it would just return a JSON API. And this was in 2019. The response I got from 3 people in the room was, what is JSON? And so I feel like
really cool technology that's been around
that's been
for
around
a while.
for a long, long time, and it's a really common piece of development vernacular nowadays. And I was somewhat shocked that that was the response from multiple people in the room at a conference. And I think that's the mentality that a chunk of the ColdFusion developers have, for better or worse, or better because they were, for whatever reason, we have chunks of people that don't know what the modern web is doing yet. And so they're behind the times and learning like that ColdFusion is still vibrant and that there are
they and their companies are not investing enough in learning and training.
Yeah.
And IT has always been always a fast moving, changing field. And to be honest, if you're not growing and learning, you're dying.
Yeah. There was a great meme I saw going around a little while ago that said software developers are students that have agreed to do homework for the rest of their lives. And you're like, the good ones, that's pretty accurate. There's always a concern
but
if you have to.
It's not. I would rephrase that. It's not work, because people who are good at this, they don't make it work. They enjoy it. They like playing with new technologies. It's home play. It's not homework.
It is, and I think the trick with that is the question of how do you learn the new things while still maintaining the healthy work-life balance? Because you need to do your 9-to-5 work where you're getting paid, while also keeping an eye on what's coming over the horizon. But that doesn't necessarily mean you have to spend 20 hours a day writing code and reading blogs and scrolling through everything on Twitter and Slack and whatever.
There's got to be an hour would be great,
I'm a big fan of the 30 minutes a day philosophy. I think you and I have talked about before. Like, find a half an hour a day to do whatever the new project is. If it's I need to learn Angular, then great. Spend 30 minutes a day until you can build an Angular app and do that. Or if it's I need to learn how to use CommandBox or ForgeBox, come up with a goal. I will make my first CommandBox package, and then just do half an hour a day every day to get that point. And it is possible, I think, to do small chunks of time like that consistently and get these goals. And we just don't have as I don't think that kind of mentality has been promoted as much in some of the ColdFusion shops across at least the US as they could be.
I mean, just look at what Google does for their stuff. Don't they allocate 20% of the time to just playing around or doing new things?
I think they do, yeah.
And that's where some major products have come out for Google by people doing that. So I'm not saying, you have to have that in your organization, but maybe a lunch and learn kind of thing.
Yeah, those are great too.
There are many ways to do this, so always be learning. So I did look up in the archive what the first episode was. It was actually with Giancarlo Gomez, and he talked all about CF WebSockets. And this was back in March 2017. So actually, it's nearly 18 months ago. Not 18 months, can't do the math.
18 or 9 months ago, something like that.
Yeah, it's 2.5 years.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say, whatever that is in months. 30
months.
Something.
Yeah.
30 months, there you go. So it's been quite a while. And so let's talk about what has changed in ColdFusion land since this initiative started. Because, sometimes when I don't know if you've ever done mass change movements where you're trying to get hundreds of thousands of people to change their beliefs. Because that's sort of, we're talking about the perception that ColdFusion is dying being changed. And that's a belief in someone's head. It's not the reality of the technology. And it seems to take quite a while to get thousands of people to change their minds, because people have cognitive bias. They sort of reinforce their beliefs with the evidence they see, even if the evidence is not, doesn't support that. So, let's. All right, now we have better lighting in the video. So some of the things changed. Of course, we started the podcast. I released the CF Live book. And those have been good. And also, I just want to give a shout out to, it's Gavin at Autis. That was the name I was trying to remember. Gavin and the rest of the Audis team started the Modernize or Die podcast as well, because when I started the podcast, there was no ColdFusion podcast. There used to be the CFR, but it had come to an end after many hundreds of episodes. So lots of cool innovations going on. So what else has changed to make ColdFusion more alive in the last 2.5 years?
Last 2.5 years. I think the Modernize or Die movement from Ortis has definitely been a big help. Again, the command box, forge box thing has been a big game changer. I think we're not done with it yet, but I think things are getting better about the ColdFusion community knowing that not all of the Ortis products require cold box, that you can do things like use test box to test your legacy CFML app. You can use...
no, I'm laughing because so many people think that,
Yeah,
that was
a cliche. That's a big, a long-term problem in the space. They feel like, anything with the word box in it, I have to use cold box to benefit from that. And a lot of the products,
nothing to do with cold box.
Yeah, nothing to do with cold box. There are several of them where if you use cold box, that other product, whether it's test box or something else, it will have a couple of pieces of additional functionality in it. But you can use it straight up to test, CF includes and old terrible web apps and whatever else you want to do with it. I think we're getting better. The Modernize or Die thing has been a big help.
I just want to shout out the conference Into the Box, which is, run by Altis in Houston, and now they're going to do one in Latin America, and they're planning on doing some initiative in Europe as well. That conference is not just a box conference. Half the sessions there were nothing to do with box stuff. They would do with ColdFusion or other technologies.
I continually tell people the Into the Box conference is probably the best conference to go to right now for learning how to write modern CFML code. And by modern, I don't mean it has to be a cold box app. Yes, there are a few sessions at the event pertaining to cold box stuff, but they've had like the Nginx team out there showing how Nginx works. They have the Fusion Reactor guys there demoing what Fusion Reactor does. There was a talk, I think at Into the Box 2018 about like dealing with anxiety and mental health disorders.
I forget the guy's name. Jeffrey. I interviewed him on the podcast because a lot of programmers get anxious and
there's lots of that. You have to make sure you take care of yourself mentally, and it was great to see sessions like that popping up at the conference.
Yeah. We didn't do a session at that conference, but who's Luis's brother? Sorry, my brain is just not working this morning. Is in Switzerland?
Jorge,
the project manager dude.
Jorge.
Yes, Jorge.
Yeah.
Jorge.
I think it's his cousin or something, but yeah, that's Jorge.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize for misrelating you.
No, you're
anyway, good. He is really, he was at a training session and one of the developers seemed all happy who was there, and then they committed suicide. And so he's been on a mission to, help the ColdFusion developers who are
suicidal. That's awful. I didn't know that.
Get help. Yeah, I did a whole podcast interview on this, and we talked about practical ways to help with that. So I guess there's a whole, sometimes in the past, developers were a little shy about talking about their feelings or, problems going on. And I think there has been a bit of a shift to more openness to talk about this stuff. So I think that's a shift. Maybe that's, related to this, or it's going on at the same time. But I think that's important because if you're feeling burnt out and depressed about ColdFusion, if you don't talk about it, how are you going to change it?
Yeah. Or just burnt out and depressed feeling about anything too, whether it's not because you're using a certain tech stack to do your job, but something else. And then the fact that you feel like your job is not fun anymore or not giving you current skills, that would just compound a problem happening elsewhere too. And I don't know that it's necessarily related to the CF Alive revolution thing, but we are seeing more soft skill style sessions added at conferences, and more of that info is just being made generally available to people. Related to that, I think we're also seeing an increase in work at conferences to make sure they're more inclusive and welcoming of everybody. And I was talking to you before we started recording about CF Camp that just happened last month. And two of the nice things they did at CF Camp were, one, they had pronoun stickers for our name badges. So you could have a he, him, or she, her sticker on your name tag at the event, and that was helpful. And this year, when they picked the speakers for CF Camp, they did so with a completely anonymous selection process. So as in previous years, I don't think because of anyone in doing it intentionally, but in previous years, they had the situation where every speaker was, a white male, probably over 35 or 40 years old. And this year they said, let's mix it up and make sure that we can try to, be more inclusive of everyone. They had the anonymous speaker selection process. And I think there were like 20% women among the speakers at CF Camp this year. And then CF Summit has a pretty good mix of people of different backgrounds, men and women speaking. Into the Box, I don't know off the top of my head. I think there were two women speakers. Yeah, that's a bit of a smaller conference, so 2 makes it sound tiny. That still is probably maybe 10%, 15% of the total speaker list at the conference. So not 50-50, but much better than previous events have been before. And so things are headed in the right direction. And I think it's good that all of these things are happening at the same time. They can all sort of pull off of each other's momentum and move events forward, move ColdFusion forward, move diversity in development forward at the same time, make the events more welcoming to everyone, include better session content, things like, maintaining good mental health, and along with other events that, things that have nothing to do with ColdFusion, like we mentioned before, Nginx and Fusion Reactor and all those sorts of things that all make the modern solution. And Docker, the Docker guys have been at those events a few times. Yeah, they've given lectures and workshops, and other developers have just talked about how they use Docker at different in different projects, or things like Elasticsearch or MongoDB or Amazon Web Services pop up very regularly now. And all of which can get tied in with ColdFusion or Lucy and get used for building modern web apps. In fact, in most modern web apps, if you go to a web page, you wouldn't be able to tell by looking at the site if it was built in ColdFusion or something else, because the URLs are all, set up with SEO links these days. They don't end in, like, you don't go to contact.cfm anymore. You just go to /contact, and the rest of it's hidden behind the scenes.
Well, and often people, for security reasons, turn off the header broadcast of what the server technology is. So a lot of these sites, like Built With and some other ones out there that say, here's a survey of what sites are running what technology, they're totally wrong on what technology is there. And they show, ColdFusion at some small percentage, where in reality they're I and Brad did this investigation into that technology and some of the other ones, and we fed sites that we knew because we'd written them. They were in ColdFusion, and they said the site came back, this is in Java, this is .NET. It's like, guys, your identification stuff is not working right, and it's creating a false perception of the use of ColdFusion. Not to mention that, according to an Adobe survey, for every public site that uses ColdFusion, there's 2 to 3 sites that are intranet or extranet or hidden behind some firewall using it. And I don't know if you remember the NASA speaker at CF Summit 2 years ago saying how NASA uses ColdFusion extensively. None of that is public facing. It's all internal stuff they have that has thousands of employees getting things done, sending missions to Mars and what have you.
I believe it. My first several ColdFusion jobs were all writing intranets in straight CFML, but none of it's publicly visible. They're all, warehouse apps or company intranets, or just internal tools they needed for something, and you'd have no way of knowing that was in use.
It's like there's an iceberg. There's the tip where you can see the public stuff that's identified, but then there's another 90% below the ocean that's doing powerful things. So you mentioned improvements in conferences. There have been more conferences in ColdFusion in the last few years. CF Summit India started. Into the Box only started 3 years ago, I want to say. So just before this revolution. CF Camp's been improving. CF Summit East has grown tremendously in the last few years. I mean, it started with just 30 attendees. I think last year there were 250 attendees. So.
It was really good last year. I spoke and gave a workshop on connecting Angular with ColdFusion, and we had a full room of probably 40 people signed up for the workshop. And the conference had to be at least 200, 250 people. It was a really big, well done event. The quality of the sessions had moved forward too. Not that the speakers had done a bad job in previous years, but the talks were moving forward much like they do at other conferences too, and showing people at all the conferences all the modern things you can do. Like Brian Kloss gave a great talk on using ColdFusion with Amazon Web Services, showing how to connect those together and do some amazing things. I know we've had a couple of conferences that have called it a day for whatever reason recently, like CF Objective and NC DevCon isn't around anymore.
I think it's sort of still on hiatus. Is it Dan who I bumped into at CF Summit, and he wasn't averse to getting it rolling again, maybe in conjunction with another conference that's in.
I didn't know that. That's
Carolina. Cool. Yeah, but he's a busy guy. It's a lot of work to run a conference. I know. It is. Run CF United, and there was a lot of help from people in the TerraTech team and all the speakers and everyone and sponsors. But it is a lot of work.
It's a big deal. But like you were saying, now we have CF Summit East is doing really well, and there's now a CF Summit India that's going as well. And Adobe's going to do some ColdFusion event in Europe, I think in coordination with CF Camp. I think they were talking about doing something like that together.
Yeah. And then Into the Box is having a Latin American conference.
Yep.
And they talked about a European event as well. So a lot of conference excitement. And also, I think, as well as the inclusivity and diversity of the speakers and attendees, for certainly on the female aspect, when I've done surveys on this, at least 30% of ColdFusion developers are women, and yet they don't speak at conferences as much, and they don't even attend conferences as much.
Yeah.
So shout out to all the female CF Alive podcast listeners. Hey, really recommend you attend a conference this coming year and apply to speak.
Women, the women speakers, shout out to them too. We've had several that are amazing. I mean, I can't speak on behalf of every speaker, male or female, but like Uma, whose last name I'm forgetting at the moment, she's given a great talk on how to do different types of testing your CFML app at Into the Box, and at she just gave a variation of that talk at CF Camp in Germany. She's given it at the summit, and that one always goes over tremendously well. Alicia, of course, too, from the Adobe team, does a really good job getting people excited about new things coming up in ColdFusion and demoing security and talking about performance and all their plans for the future. And we'd love to see more women at the events, and and
interviewed on the CF Live podcast. I've had quite a number of
writing blogs and
blogging, tweeting.
Yeah.
Uma Gotika, if I'm not totally mangling up your last name there. I also did a whole series of 4 interviews around the Me Too time about women in technology and issues, not just attending conferences, but just in general. It can be quite a male-dominated field, and what's the word? Patriarchy. Where some women, don't feel they can speak up in meetings, or their ideas get put down.
Right.
And you mentioned a new innovation of CF Camp this year about the Q&A, which I think will help anyone, whether they're female or male, if they're just a bit of a new speaker or they're shy about asking questions. What was that innovation?
Oh, yeah. So they did a thing. Usually at a conference, we'll have maybe a 1-hour session. The speaker will talk for 45 or 50 minutes, and they'll leave the last 5 or 10 minutes for questions from the audience. And this year at CF Camp, they said, okay, you get I can't remember how long, 45 or 50 minutes for your talk. And then they said no Q&A. So when you're done, just say thank you and stop. And then if people want to come ask the speaker questions, they provided an office hours time and location where basically after your talk, you could go stand over by a certain booth out in the lobby area of the conference near the vendor booths. And people could come up to you in a one-on-one setting and ask the questions there. And at first I thought that was really odd. I had never heard of that happening before. I didn't know why. So I asked Kai about it. So what's going on? And apparently this is really common at conferences in Europe and Asia. What it does a couple of things. It helps with, often you'll have this happen when you give a talk. At the end you say, are there any questions? No hands will go up when it's a full room of people. And then as everyone's leaving, 2 or 3 individuals will come trickling up and basically to ask a one-on-one question that they didn't feel comfortable asking in front of a larger audience for whatever reason. This gives those people...
Because they don't want to look stupid.
Exactly, they don't want to look stupid.
Or they don't like public speaking, and the idea of speaking in front of an audience of 100 people is terrifying.
Yeah, so it gives those people a safer way to ask the questions without feeling freaked out. On the other side, too, sometimes new speakers don't feel comfortable answering a question in a room that large, especially when their answer is going to be, I don't know the answer to that. It takes a long time of speaking in front of crowds to get comfortable with just responding, I don't know. Does anyone else know how to answer his or her question? And new speakers don't have that ability often. So getting rid of the large crowd, giving the office hours situation makes both those scenarios kind of go away. It also solves the problem of having that jerk in the room that will occasionally try to ask a random, obscure question just to get the speaker to stumble a bit. And kind of, people in the audience sometimes like to puff their chest and feel like they know more than the presenter does. And they'll ask questions like, what happens if I wrote code with this library and this build process on this kind of machine on a Thursday with a full moon? How does it do such and such thing? Just so they can respond and say, oh, I actually know the answer to that. And you didn't know it, speaker. Ha, ha, ha. Well, people like that don't go to the one-on-one office hour sessions because there's no crowd there to, feel like they're being built up with. So that whole scenario goes away entirely too when you do the office hours thing. So, it was really interesting.
Yeah, no, it's a great innovation. I hope other conferences pay attention to that and can implement something similar. And it just gives you, this happens naturally, like you said, at the end of the talk, people come up one-on-one to ask the speaker questions. And that is nice, but first of all, the speaker's usually quite exhausted after giving a talk. And secondly, it can go into the next speaker's time and setup. The next speaker wants to be there setting up, but they can't do it because people are there and the last speaker hasn't taken their laptop down. So I think moving that to a separate area is a nice innovation.
It can definitely help with that as well, yeah. That was one of the things CF Camp was really good about doing this year. I didn't see it previous years, but I might have just missed it. They would have people come in when there were 10 minutes left in the session and hold up a sign that said 10. And at 5 minutes, someone came in with a 5-minute sign. So you had the warnings about, wrap it up.
Yeah, because it's easy to lose track of time when you're speaking. You get so excited doing it or nervous or however you want to frame it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I always reframe anxiety into excited because it's really the same sensation in the body. There's tingling in the tummy. Your hands might be a bit sweaty. But for me, that's like excited. Whereas when I was younger, it was, oh my God, I'm anxious. I need to hide. So I was going to say something else about this, but it'll come back to me in a moment. So any other conference innovations you've seen in the last 2.5 years or improvements?
To work for splitting up the... No, I think there's been a lot of work on the inclusivity and welcoming everyone, and that's moving forward really well. I think we do have different ColdFusion conferences now than there were 5 years ago, but there's still a decent amount of them in different parts of the world. There is one relatively near most tech areas to make something available. I do like the other trend, I guess it is, in that an event might be branded a ColdFusion conference, but the amount of content there that works for any technology stack is also growing at these events. Like, to use Into the Box again as an example, the Nginx talks. Nginx could be used for anything. It's a web server. So that's in no way tied to CFML. You could use that for whatever. Docker, same thing. Docker is designed to be, whatever the heck you want it to be. You want to power 9 CFML servers? Great, do it. You want to power 5 Elastic search machines? Great, do that. You can do any combination of that stuff. And that kind of bend to the ColdFusion conferences is also increasing. I think there's events where you can learn how to tie it to Amazon Web Services or search engine optimization tricks that work for anything. There's been several great talks I've seen lately from Dave Ferguson and Eric Cobbs. Eric Hobbs? Eric. They both give great talks on like, here's tricks to optimize your database, and that all works whether it's ColdFusion or not. And I don't know if that's really an innovation, but I like that trend is happening more of, okay, yes, this is a ColdFusion conference, but we know that people need to know more than just CFML stuff. They need to know how to do that with Angular or Elasticsearch or Docker or whatever. And
new topics. And sort of related to that, I've seen more people using modern tools, like even simple things like source control. It's getting rarer and rarer that someone says, oh yeah, I don't use source control. People are embracing these modern ecosystem innovations. Speaking of learning new things, there have been several books released on ColdFusion, not just the CF Live book, which was a bestseller, but Luis just released Learn Modern CFML in 100 Minutes. I think if I'm not totally mangling his title up.
That is totally the name. I got it right there.
Ooh, right there. There you are, video listeners. You got to see that. Signed by Luis, no doubt. You got that at CF Summit, right?
I got it at CF. No, I got this at CF Camp.
Oh, you did?
And Luis was not there this year. He was on a vacation with his wife. So Jorge actually handed me that book. It is not signed by anyone, but it's currently sitting here with a page, bent over where I've paused in reading it for the moment. But yeah, it's another good new resource, new book available to show people how to write modern code and modern CFML.
And then there's a book about CF and Angular. I'm spacing on the exact title, but there was a new edition of that put out.
I didn't know that.
I will try and find that.
That's cool.
Yeah, I noticed that. Learn with Angular 7, Bootstrap, and ColdFusion Enterprise, something or another. Enterprise Application Development by Jeffrey Hauser.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, version 7, Angular 7.
Right on. I didn't know he did that.
Yeah, that came out November 2018. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes because, I don't think Jeffrey really promoted it very heavily, or at least I didn't see the promotion. It is good. Then also, let us not forget the other big learning resource for ColdFusion that had a total revamp that was released, which is Learn CF in a Week.
Yes.
So I interviewed some of the guys behind that and on the podcast, and they've done a lot to modernize it and improve how it works. So just looking for where that went. Learn CF Week, Daniel Fredericks, Dave Ferguson, and Carl von Steffen. He sounds like he should be in some special German movie. So
Carl lives about an hour from me, actually. He's down in the Bay Area, and super good guy.
So very popular resource, totally free, and you really can learn ColdFusion in a week, even if you've never done it before. And to be honest, if you haven't touched up your ColdFusion skills recently, I think doing that, Learn CF in a week, you're going to learn some new stuff. Which brings us on to the next new thing that came out, which was the I don't have the official title for it, but the ColdFusion certification, technical specialist training or something. Adobe just released at CF Summit.
Yes.
And I think you were involved in creating that, weren't you? It was 23 hours of video.
I think it's 23 or it's 20 some videos, but they're not all an hour in length.
Oh, okay.
So the amount of videos is, I think it's about 10 hours in video. But there's somewhere around 20 or so actual videos, and they range in length from like 10 to 45 or 50 minutes long. So we, Adobe and my team partnered together. We wrote up a list of, okay, what content needs to go in these videos. I wrote the scripts and all the code demos, recorded all the videos. Adobe was kind enough to assist with that process. They did a bunch of the editing and bookending the videos together and tidying them up for me. And then we worked with Damien, whose last name I'm blanking on again. I'm sorry, Damien. And Brian Sappy. I think there were one or two other people as well. There was a team of a handful of us that wrote the ColdFusion certification tests. So the idea with the project is people can sign up to become ColdFusion certified. They can watch the 10 or so hours of video. And then at the end of that process, they can go to one of the ColdFusion conferences and take an all-day workshop. And the point of the workshop is two things. One is basically we spend the majority of the day reviewing what was in the videos. We'll go over, okay, there was a video on functions, and here's how functions work, and here's what the argument scope does, and what the var scope does. Any questions? And it gives people a chance to ask a question or two about what may or may not be in the videos. We cover everything there, and then at the end of that day, the students have the last hour of the day to take the ColdFusion certification test. And if they pass the test, then they get certified in ColdFusion.
And a very snazzy logo for their LinkedIn profile.
Very snazzy logo for LinkedIn. They get a very nice framed certificate. They get a hoodie that says ColdFusion Certification Specialist on it or something to that effect. It's very, very warm. It is the warmest hoodie I own by a wide margin. I have to be careful when I take it with me sometimes. I like to grab hoodies and when I leave the house. And this one, I'll grab it and be like, oh my God, I'm sweating. Like, what's going on? Oh, I have my Adobe hoodie on. It's super warm. So that's out and available now.
And I think isn't there a listing of certified developers on the Adobe site as well?
I believe so. I wasn't involved in putting the list together or putting that on the web, so I'm not positive if that's gone live or what the plan is for that. I think
I interviewed Alicia all about this, and I think that was one of the benefits. I mean, part of there's several reasons for having that certification. One is to help people modernize their ColdFusion skills and to demonstrate that to their employer. But also it's to help with hiring, make it easier to hire good ColdFusion developers, help people get ahead of the pack in getting a new job or freelancing gig if that's what they do. And now we have that out there again. There used to be a ColdFusion certification back in the CF 6 or 7 days, and then over the years it just sort of CF8
faded out. CF8 was the last one? Okay.
Yeah.
So it faded out. Okay. I think I took it for 6 or 7. And it just kind of faded out and wasn't a thing anymore. And Adobe contacted me last year and said, can you help us put this together? I said, of course. We've got that up and running now. So the test covers kind of what I would call the fundamentals of modern CFML development. So you're not going to learn ColdBox. You're not going to learn Framework 1. It doesn't cover a bunch of the design patterns. It covers MVC a little bit, and it covers some basic OO concepts like inheritance and composition are in there. But things like the decorator pattern or the the Hollywood pattern, things like that are not in the videos. But so it gets you right up through an intro to MVC itself, and then it kind of stops there. There's talk of maybe revamping it a little bit more, adding some more stuff in 2020. I don't know of any official. That was just kind of a hallway discussion that we had about it. Like, oh, it'd be great to add, a couple more things. I said, absolutely, let's do it. There haven't been any contracts signed or anything like that yet, though, so I don't know if that's going to officially happen or not. I would love to see it happen. I would love to see more content go into the videos and more stuff be made available to everyone. But yeah, you can get certified again in Adobe ColdFusion, and it's all current modern techniques, the stuff that, like we mentioned earlier, that the 9-to-5 programmers typically aren't aware of. Things like even simple stuff like the shorthand syntax for making an array. You don't have to type array new parenthesis 1 parenthesis anymore. You can just use square brackets like you can in JavaScript. We've got things like closures and member functions like you have in Java and JavaScript and various other languages. And that's all available now. And we cover that in the videos and show how those work. And And all of the videos are, all the code samples in the videos are CF script. They're not tag based. There's a few references to the tags where it makes sense to do so, but I'd say like 90% of the code is all modern CF script style syntax too. So I know that's been another thing that longtime CF developers have shied away from. They don't quite understand what the scripty syntax is for, or they haven't seen good examples of what to do with it yet. So now we have demos of all that in the videos for everyone.
It's the modern way of programming.
It is the modern way of programming.
And also because it's very close to JavaScript, in fact, will be fully compatible with it in the CF 2020 release. It means the people who know JavaScript, which, let's face it, is every full stack developer on the planet, can instantly code in ColdFusion.
Yeah, that's the idea. Like, make it look as much like the other programming languages as we can, so that it's easy to transition from one to the other.
But it's also a better way to write a lot of code. I mean, there still is a place for CF tags.
There is, and I still use tags for certain things too. Like my view layer in my app is all tags because it just flows more nicely with the HTML.
Yeah.
Switching between HTML and script feels too much like writing PHP, and that's a slower workflow and just doesn't work well. So I use tags for all of my view layer stuff, but anything talking to the database, service layers, controllers, any of that stuff, that's all script whenever possible these days. But anyway, yeah, we talk about all that in the certification training process. We just did the first round of getting people certified at the ColdFusion Summit this last, what was that, October? And that went really well. Yeah, they opened one all-day workshop. I think it was capped at 40 students. And they said, well, let's see how well this sells. And it sold really quickly and sold out. So they opened a second session. Same thing happened. It sold out. And I think when all was said and done, we had 3 pretty much sold out rooms doing that certification. We had 120 or so people show up in Vegas to get certified in ColdFusion 2018. And about 90% of them passed the test too. So a whole lot of people came away from that, I think, pretty satisfied. And now they have a nice certificate to show that they know what they're doing.
That's amazing. That's a total revitalization of what's going on in learning CF and certification. So let's talk about some of the new tools that have been released in the last few years. A lot of exciting stuff. I mean, there have been updates for ColdBox and CF Wheels. I'm not sure if Framework 1 had an update or not, but it's certainly still being actively developed.
Still being active. There was a little bit of a transition. Sean Corfield sort of handed the reins over to myself and a couple of other folks. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we've just been busy with other things and haven't updated it much. But I plan on, I've got a couple of demos in the works for it. And Stephen, I know, has answered some questions on the forum and such for that lately too. So it's still there. Yeah.
Excellent. And then on the security front, Pete Freitag at Foundio released Fixinator, and I forget, he has a name for this, but the web application firewall thing that he has, and that's on top of the Hack My CF.
Are you talking about CFusion? Or
no,
I know what you're talking about. FuseGuard.
FuseGuard, thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
And then Fusion Reactor has had several releases, and of course they released their cloud version as well in the last few years. So
yeah, they've been doing a ton of stuff
there. And I guess we should mention too that Adobe released the Performance Monitor tool, or whatever they call it, PMT. That's also another core monitor. And then Autis went on a flurry of new releases and new products. I'm not sure which new box products have been released in the last 2.5 years, but I sort of feel Wirebox was new and TestBox was new.
They've definitely put out new versions of Wirebox and TestBox. I don't remember how long those have been available overall, but there was a new rev of TestBox that came out within the last 2 months. Wirebox, at some point in the last year, they revved Wirebox. There've been several of those. Contant Box, their CMS engine, has gotten a couple of updates as well. The ColdBox framework itself is on version 5 something now. That's been getting regular updates. I believe I just saw a post from Brad, or a tweet from Brad, maybe 2 or 3 days ago, about new command box stuff is in the works as well. He's updating some of the internal libraries that power command box, giving that a pretty good behind-the-scenes cleanup. ForgeBox just had some updates come out, I want to say a week ago. So yeah, those guys have been really busy with
Very
tools.
busy.
Very, very
I don't
busy.
know how they get any work done with all the open source stuff they do.
Oh, another Pete Freitag item that's come out is cfscript.me. Back to our conversation about how people are using tags, but CFScript is the more modern way to write code. It can be a super tedious process to take an old file full of CFML tags and convert that over to script. You don't have to do that now. You can go to the cfscript.me, I think that's it, the website, paste your tag version into the site, and it will convert everything for you over to CFScript.
Wow. He's a genius.
Yeah, and that's free. You just copy your code over, paste it, save the output, and you're done. You don't have to pay a monthly fee or anything.
And his Fixinator thing that looks for security flaws in your code, that was written as a server, a headless Lambda app, as I understand it. So
I don't know how that's written behind the scenes. I know he took some of the work from that he did from the.
He spoke about it into the box and explained how he did it as this modern Lambda, headless app.
That's cool.
So the server isn't always running. It only fires up whenever a request is made.
Interesting.
Yeah.
There's so much. Yeah, Pete and the Ortus guys, the Foundio guys and Ortus guys are just, I don't know when any of them sleep. They get so much stuff done.
Well, there only is Pete in the Foundio thing, isn't there? I've never heard of anyone else there.
I think it's mostly him. I don't know if he has a team to help him or not, but
I've never heard.
Either way,
he does. Maybe he does.
And he's got a family, and he's a busy guy. He gets a lot of things done, though. It's awesome.
Yeah. Also, Ortus, announced their 4-year roadmap of all their products. So not only have they released new versions, new products, but they said, here's what we're planning to add over the next 4 years. A lot of exciting new features they're targeting there. So I guess they're following in the footsteps of Adobe's multi-year product plans. So great they're doing that. And speaking of Adobe, I mean, not only was the Performance Manager and security, auto lockdown, which you could call a quasi product. Also, they released the API Manager.
API Manager's out.
Yeah,
and that comes with CF Enterprise, I think it is.
I'm a little unsure if it only comes with Enterprise or if you get it with Standard too.
But just part of the suite of products.
Yeah. Speaking of Adobe, not only have they sponsored all these ColdFusion conferences and they produced their own conferences, but they also last year they started going to non-ColdFusion conferences to reach out to new potential ColdFusion developers. So they were at Dev Week in Oakland, California, and they were at the National Association of Government Web Developers, or whatever exactly that web conference is. And they're planning next year to be at some other ColdFusion, non-ColdFusion conferences to get the word out on ColdFusion, and also to meet people that kind of used to do ColdFusion and maybe stopped doing it, and to say, hey, you guys have missed out on an amazing change and transformation in ColdFusion land, both for the language itself and for the ecosystem. So hats off to Adobe for doing that. And if anyone has a suggestion of conferences they should go to, let us know in the comments or drop us an email.
I think Brad Wood from Ortus did a similar thing too. He went to a couple of conferences this year that were not ColdFusion events, but he went and demoed CFML and Command Box and some of the things in that space. And I want to say he went to DevNexus. I might be totally wrong on that, but I know he was looking at doing some non-CFML events as well.
Yeah, I know the Ortus guys went to some Java event, and of course, some of their tools work with other languages too. So as does Fusion Reactor for that matter. That works with any Java, JVM type language like Scala or some of the other ones whose names elude me. Also, with the ColdFusion release, there was a major performance increase. they've obviously done a lot of work behind it. And this was like without any changes to your code. They do a lot of, what do you call it? They have like a test suite of people give them copies of their ColdFusion app when they have problems. So it's part of the QA, so the bug doesn't reemerge. But also for performance reasons, they've taken like whole apps and like see, okay, how can we tweak the ColdFusion engine to make it run this code faster, whether it's modern code or legacy code. So that's a big improvement. And then there's the whole Lucy initiative that's really, they released Lucy 5 and they're working on Lucy 6.
Yep.
And that's helped fire the whole move to containerization. Both with Command Box, letting you fire up copies of Adobe ColdFusion and Lucy without having to do any installation work. And also with Lucy, having a much better licensing model in the cloud. In other words, they don't, it's open source, so they don't charge you license. So if you spin up 20 copies of Lucy server, you don't have to worry about the legality of doing that. ColdFusion's moving towards having a pay per minute or pay per hour model. So they're going to have that for CF 2020, which is critical for being able to, have a containerized, scalable solution in the cloud.
Right.
So, let's see. And speaking of CF 2020, did you see the talk they gave on that at CF Summit?
Summit. It's all been a blur of travel and jet lag and conferences. I know I saw the talk Kishore gave. I think it was at Summit. I don't think it was at CF Camp. Yeah, I think I saw the one he gave at Summit about new things coming up. Yeah.
So, multi-cloud support, containerization, a lot of new language features. Ashish Garg, who's the new VP or Director of Software Development in ColdFusion, he gave a keynote talk on that, and I interviewed him on the podcast. Very excited to see where ColdFusion is going in that. It's an ambitious thing, but basically it's looking at ColdFusion taking over that cloud programming space because it will be so easy to create cloud apps using it. So I'm very excited to see that come out next year. We don't know the exact release date. It's like a secret at Adobe.
Right. Yeah, they've got some really nice features kind of on all layers in ColdFusion planned for the future. As a developer, I like a lot of the language constructs that they add. Things like we're finally getting null support, and they added the abstract keyword, I think, in 2018. There's more generally OO friendly stuff that lets you write code closer to something like Java with your CFML stuff. And as a developer who's written a lot of C++ code in the past and things like that, I like those OO features. I want more of them in my ColdFusion space. But those are also not things that I can usually charge my clients. They're not, or rather, to say it a different way, they're not things I can go to my clients with and say, hey, you should upgrade your version of ColdFusion so that I can use the abstract keyword. That doesn't correlate to them making any more money. Whereas things like moving them into the cloud and adding better performance, better security, being able to do new and better, maybe cheaper or more scalable infrastructure ideas, those things I can more easily translate for them. Okay, you spend this money now and here's how your server costs go down, or here's how your site performs better, or whatever that kind of aspect of it is. And that stuff is what I usually can, tell my clients about and say, we recommend you upgrade because you will benefit in these ways. And there's a nice balance of both of those types of features coming in the new versions of ColdFusion that I'm seeing right now. So,
very cool.
Yeah, I like it. I hope it all comes out really well, and we, and everything plays nicely together, and we get to upgrade all of our servers, and everything just works. Famous last words.
I guess we should give a shout out for productivity in ColdFusion. That isn't new in the two and a half years CF Live revolution going, but certainly Adobe has been focusing on that. Their mantra this last CF Summit was performance, productivity, and security. And ColdFusion hits it out of the park in all three of those areas. So, it's rapid application development, it's fast performing code, it's scalable, and it's secure. In fact, I looked through the CVE data on security of different web languages and, how many instances they've had and day zero errors. ColdFusion actually came out as the most secure of those. So it's more secure than .NET or Java or PHP, all these other languages. And yet sometimes I feel there's a little bit of insecurity in the ColdFusion community, because every time there's Adobe announces a new security hole that's being fixed, people freak out. And maybe they should freak out a little bit, because they should be applying that hotfix to make sure they nailed it. And to those listening who are running versions of ColdFusion that have gone end of life, which includes CF9 and CF10, and I think is CF11 end of life? I think
11 just got end of life now too.
Yeah, just end of life. So none of those get hot fixes anymore. If you're running any of those, it's just a disaster waiting to happen on the security front.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think there's been more emphasis on security, and maybe that's not in the last 2.5 years. I think Adobe's been doing that, and Lucy's been doing it for quite a number of years. And I know Adobe have a security czar who's like, their only job is to make sure that it's totally secure. And all their internal engineers get trained in how to write secure code. And if there ever is a security incident, it's like a red alert on Starship Enterprise. They kind of, the whole management team is involved until that security issue is resolved. So they take it incredibly seriously. So let's just end this by talking about how the ColdFusion community has changed, and also look at what we're looking forward to next year. So I think there's been a more positive atmosphere in the ColdFusion community, both at conferences and online. What have you noticed, Nolan?
I think it's definitely been a positive community. I don't think I don't know. I feel like if you look in the right spots, there's always been positive things happening there. It's not been completely negative, anywhere ever, which is good. I think generally people are trying to move forward maybe more than they were, 3, 4, 5 years ago. There's maybe less resistance in some conferences to doing things the modern way, or we're just getting better about educating the community.
And some of the people who behaved negatively in the past have either removed themselves from the CF community or they've behaved better.
True, and I've run into one or two people over the years that maybe they seem like I don't think that person's the most social of presenters, but yeah, for the most part, everyone's super nice in the community and willing to help out. And I know when I first started going to ColdFusion conferences, I think the first one I went to was CF Objective in Minneapolis. And I had just started my consulting business, didn't really know any people other than I knew names of blogs that I read regularly, but I wasn't friends with any of these people. I just knew these are the websites I go to get questions answered. And there was an event. I think we all went to go watch what was then the new Star Trek movie one night. And they said, go meet in the hotel lobby at 5 o'clock or whatever. We're going to carpool over to the theater. So I went over there and met. They just said, "You here for the movie?" "Yeah, hi, I'm Nolan." And much to my surprise, the first response I heard from someone was, "Oh, Nolan Erck? Oh, I use your slides on CF components to teach all my new junior developers how to do OO programming in ColdFusion. Hi, and that turned out to be Jason Dean." I had no idea who he was by looking at him until then I'd read the name. Like, "Oh yeah, I read your blog all the time. You write 12robots.com. There's great stuff on there." And I just ended up being in a van to go see the movie with Jason, and ended up being like Ben Nadell and Dan Vega and a handful of other folks in there that I knew the names of, but I'd never met any of them before in person. And I've heard other people say before too that like they get a little, for lack of a better phrase, starstruck about like, that's Ben Nadell, or that's Tim Cunningham, or whoever, these people that like they write all the blogs that we read and learn all of our stuff from. And the ColdFusion community is all really just people that are super nice and want to share their info with everyone. And there's really no egos, I don't think, among the people that are regularly blogging or speaking at conferences or running podcasts or on podcasts. It's all people that are just super nice and like making things and contributing and helping to teach people. And I think it's always been that way, but there's definitely been more of that happening lately. Just more diverse people doing that, more women that are getting chances to speak at conferences and things like that, and just more podcasts. I mean, this one's been going on for 100 episodes now. That's amazing.
It is amazing. Thanks to all the guests like you who helped achieve that. And thanks to myself and the rest of the TerraTech team who puts out the podcast. So gets it up on iTunes and YouTube and Stitcher and all the other places it goes to, and makes the transcripts. So we have a way to scan through the episode without having to re-listen to it in the future. If we don't wish to. Some of us are not oral people. Some of us like to read.
That's true.
Just give a shout out in the CF Alive book. There's a suggested community guidelines section in there, and I think I'm going to make a blog post out of that and promote it a bit more, because I think it would help to put in writing how we like to behave in the best version of ourselves in the CF community. So I'll put that out and put a link to that in there. So 2020, end of the decade, is coming up in a few months, and a new decade is starting. So what are you looking forward to for the CF Live revolution and ColdFusion modernization?
2020, I'm looking forward to... Oh, man. Looking forward to a bunch of stuff, I guess. We're going to have CF version 2020 coming out. That'll be good to see get released. And, hopefully everyone likes the features that go into that. And we see a lot of positive traction off of those. I'm certain we'll see probably 75 or 80 new products from the Ortus team coming out and making everything,
They only have like a dozen box products. I mean,
now, but I mean, we're talking.
Yes, maybe next year they might have 70 or 80. Yeah,
they've got a whole second conference now. That wasn't a thing last year. There's a Latin America into the box now,
and a European one's coming.
A European something or other. I didn't know that either. Yeah, so it'll be fun to see.
Luis announced that at CF Summit. I captured it on video.
Oh, nice. I'm so behind on. So on the Modernizer Die podcast, I listen to those. In order, just because I've got these YouTube playlists that I do that, but the CF Live podcast, I kind of pick random order to listen to them. I watched the one with Dominic from like a year and a half ago, earlier this week, because I was looking for something about Preside. I'm like, oh, Dominic, that's right. He's got a podcast episode on there. I'll watch that now. And so I don't watch the CF Live ones in sequence. I need to be better about doing that. I watch them sort of in random fashion.
I think that's fine. There's no particular order to the CF.
No, but I miss things like Luis announcing European conferences and such.
Well, that was on our YouTube channel.
So, okay.
Yes, we have a TerraTech CF YouTube channel.
Cool.
Anyway, what else are you looking forward to?
CF Camp has got plans to move forward with that and do more things. I'd like to see that continue to grow. I think it's a great conference, and I'm glad to see the improvements they made this year to both size of the conference, inclusivity of everyone. The new hotel they're at now is really nice. They've moved that conference to, I think, 3 or 4 different venues over the history of the event because they keep outgrowing the previous space. Right now they're at a great, I think it's a Hilton or Marriott hotel in Freising.
Marriott. Yeah, Marriott, at the airport.
Yeah. And it's great. So they have the conference is at the same it's actually at the hotel where the speakers stay. So you have the ability to go back and forth to your room real easily if you want to drop off your bag or whatever. That has not been the case at the previous couple of locations. So it's kind of a nice improvement now of where they're at. I'd like to see that conference continue to grow. Mira has got version 7.2 that's going to be released pretty soon. I mean, they're really excited about all the new features that they put into Mira 7.2. So it'll be nice to see that get released and put out into the wild. They've been doing a lot of work to make Mira run really nicely as a headless CMS. You can power like your Vue.js apps with it, or Angular, or whatever else you want with it. And I haven't looked at the latest version of Mira in a little while, so it'll be nice to see what they put into 7.2 and check out some of the stuff coming out from them. Oh man, what else? I'd love to see the ColdFusion certification stuff continue, and hopefully
that's Adobe supposed to come to Europe, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
And to Washington, D.C.
There's been talk of a few things, yeah, but I haven't I don't know what their plans are as far as like adding more videos and more content. If they want to do like a 2.0 version of the certification later that includes things. We talked about some stuff like the certification right now does not include some of what I would call the niche market tags, things like talking to a Microsoft Exchange server. Not everyone needs to do that. So there's no test question in the certification about how do you talk to an Exchange server. But for the people that need to know how to do that, they need to know how to do that really well. So it'd be nice to see sort of an add-on certificate for that. Maybe you can get certified in general ColdFusion use, and you can get certified with a specialty in talking to Exchange servers or a specialty in generating PDF documents or spreadsheets and things like that. So yeah, it'd be nice to see what Adobe does in 2020 with not just ColdFusion version 2020, but the certification and training plans in the future in general and all that stuff. So
very cool. I mean, also, I just want to give a shout out to Adobe. Alicia does a kind of roadshow where she goes to different cities and talks to key companies and organizations that are using ColdFusion. And Altus does roadshow, and they did their kind of developer week thing, or I forget what they called it. But they had
Altus Developer Week.
Altus Developer Week. They did webinars, all kinds of cool stuff. I'm working on a new book on ColdFusion called ColdFusion Rocks, which is designed for CIOs who either have left ColdFusion and why they might want to come back, or why someone should stay, or why someone who's never used ColdFusion should look at using it. So looking at it more from the IT management point of view. And then I think Lucy is due for an update to release in 2020. So excited to see what they put in that. So I'm just going to come to the question I always ask guests, so let's ask ourselves this. What would it make to make ColdFusion even more alive in 2020?
Oh, man. Even more alive in 2020. We've got so much stuff in the works right now. That's kind of a tough, I'm not sure. Like, we have really good podcasts now that are coming out with content. There's really good YouTube videos, conferences on multiple continents now. I think we need just to kind of keep the momentum going would be a general statement about it. Like, there's space for all of those things. There's a space for the frameworks that are being developed and the podcasts and the blog posts that are out there and the training and everything. And like, I feel like it's, maybe just keeping the momentum going to those things for 2020 would be what we need to do. But, the book and all the stuff that the other platforms do, and I don't think they view it as a revival. They just view it as like, well, that's what you do with a platform that's alive, is you have people that blog about it and put podcasts out and things on it. So maybe if we do another year or two of pushing things, that'll just be the new norm for everyone in ColdFusion land. Of just, well, yeah, of course there are blog posts everywhere and podcasts everywhere and training and such, because it's a modern, tech stack, just like anything else. I don't know if there's any one area that I think it's lacking in right now. The resources are there if you need them in whatever capacity or platform you're looking for.
I totally agree with that, and I just want to call out some of the listeners. Some people listening to this are blogging and tweeting or making tools or sharing cool stuff they're doing in ColdFusion. And I know there are some people listening who maybe still see it someone else's job to make ColdFusion alive. And I just want to tell you, your ColdFusion needs you to help you. Be the change you want to see in the world. If you want ColdFusion to be more alive, everyone listening can do some small thing. Even if it's just tweeting about something cool you did in ColdFusion, or retweeting something else you saw, or helping someone out in the ColdFusion community. And just being more visible and being proud that you use ColdFusion. We need to get rid of this language shame where you don't own up to doing stuff in ColdFusion for fear of being beaten up by a band of roving .NET developers. I think just be proud that we use ColdFusion. Maybe even if we're allowed to put it on our website, built with ColdFusion. I don't know if you remember the Alaire days. They used to have that little logo, built with ColdFusion, or something that had the little lightning bolt and what have you on there. I think we need to recreate something like that. And also, although the CF Slack channel is responsive and people chat a lot in there, it's not searchable. All the content goes away after a certain period of time because it's a free version of Slack. I just want to put out to people, why don't we post our questions into some public searchable forum like, how about Stack Overflow, for example? Great platform, upvoting of content, threaded discussions, and more importantly, organizations like Gardener Research and Forrester Research look at places like Stack Overflow to determine if a language is alive or dead. Right. And if they don't see any ColdFusion posts on there, they kind of assume that no one's talking about it, which is not true because they're all in the Slack channel talking about it. But
yeah,
I think, to be honest, the time has come for us to be proud to be ColdFusion developers. And
I'm going to reframe my answer. The thing we need to do to make ColdFusion alive in 2020 is to get rid of the Slack channel. Sorry, I'm not a fan. I like Slack for internal team projects when I need to talk to my developers about what we're doing today. It's great. But yeah, for the reasons you just mentioned, where the questions get answered, but then those answers fade out because the content from the channel gets purged every X number of weeks or whatever it is. You're right. That stuff would have much more long-term benefit if it were posted on a forum like a Google forum or a Stack Overflow board or anything that can get picked up by the search engines and archived and be made available to future developers and researchers that come in and look at how much activity there is talking about a certain language to figure out whether that language is still being used or not. None of those benefits happen when we do it all in a Slack channel. They do happen when you post in public forums. I've always been kind of surprised that the Slack channel is pushed as much as it is for support questions for a language. Because for those reasons, it doesn't make any sense to ask a question in a forum where your answer will vanish in 2 months and you'll force new people to ask it again and other people to re-answer it. Just put it all in a message board somewhere. A Google forum even, or something like that, a Stack Overflow, whatever.
I think Stack Overflow is the one that a lot of other languages use, and certainly that's where Gardener is one of the places they look to see as a language vital and alive. So I would, and from my use of it for other languages or other topics, it seems to work pretty good, and it's written by the FuseBug people who are, they're really talented developers. It's written to be good for development stuff. So I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel when the wheel's already out there.
Absolutely. I'm not knocking Stack Overflow. If anything, I'm knocking Slack because I don't think that's the right platform for question for this. Yeah, Stack Overflow works fine. Like, post them there. I mentioned Google Forums just because there are a few Google Forums for things like the command box product. There's one for Mira developers. I know there used to be one for like general OO programming in CFML. I'm not sure if that one is still around or not. There's several of them. Yeah, no, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. We can certainly use the forums that are out there, but I think, we should be encouraging people to post their questions there. And to the other side of that, we should encourage people that are moderators or whatever they're called on Stack Overflow that answer the questions to answer the questions in a professional manner. One of the problems we have, not really specific to any forum or platform in ColdFusion, is we still have a lot of developers that don't know the modern way to do things. They're still writing code using things like the CF form tags or CF includes for everything. And what we'll see sometimes is a person will say, hey, I have a CF form and it's got 3 CF inputs in it. How do I do XYZ thing? My opinion is the correct answer to that is, here's how you do XYZ thing. But moving forward, just FYI, CF form is not really supported anymore. It's kind of bad for these reasons. I would recommend when you get to a stopping point, you look at pulling that form out and replace it with a plain HTML form with JavaScript or a server-side validation or something like that for XYZ reasons. So I would answer their question about CF input and then give the next steps in the right direction. But what we see a lot on Stack Overflow or wherever is people get kind of snotty with their answers. When someone will say, how do I do this thing with CF input? The response they'll get is, oh, well, you shouldn't use CF input. Well, that isn't helpful to the person who's stuck using CF input for whatever reason. They need to know how to do the thing, even if you don't like to tell that answer or you don't think it's the cool answer to say, here's how you do it. That person needs that answer right now. So we should give them, here's your answer, but as part of that answer, move forward in this other direction. You'll save a lot of headaches later. And I would just encourage
well,
people.
That's part of these ColdFusion community guidelines that I put in the CF Life book. One of the points in there was be respectful and courteous in all your interactions. Derogatory or insulting language is not tolerated, just a quote from that. And another point in there that's sort of related is give your fellow CFers the benefit of the doubt or a, quote, beneficial reading. Because in some communities, and I think this has been true in the ColdFusion community in the past, people make a sport out of picking apart what people ask or comment. And really, we want to help people be the best they can be in their ColdFusion development.
Agreed. Yeah, exactly. Because we're things like we're talking about what can we do to make the product more alive. If you have somebody who's maybe new or behind the times with ColdFusion, they ask a question about how do I do this thing with CF input. If the response they get back is helpful, well, here's how you do that thing, and here's resources for how to make your app better when you have a little bit more downtime later on. Here's how to use HTML tags to make a form, and here's how to do that same thing with, I don't know, CSS or a jQuery plugin, or how to write a CF custom tag to do it or whatever. That developer's going to go, wow, I got a really good short-term answer. I can fix my bug today, and I have a nice to-do list item for when I build version 2 of my app. I can pull this out and use this nice code snippet that somebody gave me about how to build a regular HTML form instead. Cool. That person is going to be more interested in contributing again to the ColdFusion community, even if that person's contributions are just going to be asking questions for another couple of months until they know enough to answer some questions. They're still going to be interested in doing something. If that same person asks the question, how do I do this thing with a CF input? And the response they get back is, oh, well, it's stupid. Don't use CF input. They're probably not going to be as psyched to ask questions in that forum again. They're going to go, well, I tried using ColdFusion, but the people when I get stuck, the people in the forums are mean. The people in the Ruby forum were nicer, so I switched to Ruby or whatever. And that kind of thing happens. People don't like to think so, but it can be a factor, especially for people just starting out in development.
And it's not just the original poster who asked the question. It's other people who are lurking in that forum reading that. Thinking, well, exactly. I'm not going to ask a question if that's what happens. Yeah,
exactly. If I'm going to get torn to shreds, I'm not going to talk to people in that forum anymore. Yeah. They're going to bail and do something else. So,
all right. Yeah, well, be nice on the forums.
Be nice. Yes.
All right. Well, I think we should wrap this episode up. I think we've got a world record on the length of a CF Live podcast episode. If people want to reach you online, how should they do that, Noah?
They can find me at southofshasta.com. They can also find me on Twitter at southofshasta. Let's see, what else? Those are probably the best 2 ways to reach me right now.
And people can find me at terratech.com. That's only 1 R in Terratech. And we're on Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook. Terratech CF is usually the handle. So thanks, everyone, for listening. And congrats to all of us. Take a pat on the back there for 100 episodes. Happy birthday, CF Alive Revolution. Viva la Revolution, as they sometimes say.